According to the Gospels, for Passover, Jesus arrived into the city of Jerusalem riding a donkey as a group of people were celebrating his arrival with palm fronds and laying them in his path. Once Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, he went to the Temple Mount, and there he drove out people who were buying things and selling things and overturned the tables of the money changers, and then proceeded to speak about how terrible the acts of these people were. Now, have you ever stopped and thought, why were there money changers in the temple? Well, let's take a look at why they're there. If we look at the Greek for what he's doing here, and Jesus entered the temple, and he drove out all who sold and bought in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers, tas trapezas ton kolobiston, and the seats of those who sold pigeons. So our money changers are kolobiston. This Greek word is actually a money changer for someone who's dealing with fairly small amounts of money. So what are the small bits of change that people would be using in the temple at this time, and why are they there? Well, part of our clue is coming from our Greek sentence that Jesus is driving out people who are selling and buying things in the temple. Money changers would often be present in ancient marketplaces to help people exchange different denominations of coins. The other reason they may be there is to help the functioning of the temple. So let's take a look at what types of coins and denominations might have existed in the temple at this time. So if we look at kolubistone and the small amount of money that these people may be exchanging, that leads us to this bit of money, a pruta, a small 1.8 gram coin that is made out of bronze. This particular example was made under Pontius Pilate, the procurator of Judea under Tiberius, who was procurator in the year that Jesus was crucified. So this bronze coin is worth about 1/256th of a shekel. This is a really, really small value of a coin. And to help us put that into perspective, let's look at a shekel. So this is a Tyrian shekel that you could have found in the temple in Jerusalem at the time. It's a bit of silver that's weighing about 14.4 grams and is a bit larger in size. And this shekel is pretty pure silver. It's nearly 100% silver. And if we look at what it's worth compared to other ancient coins, it's worth the same as 4 denarii. And a denarius is the major coin of the Roman Empire, the empire that controlled Jerusalem at this time. This is an example of a Roman denarius. It is also pretty pure silver, and it weighs about 3.7 grams. And again, 4 denarii are worth the same as a shekel, which is worth the same as 256 pruta. Now, the Mint of Tyre produced not only shekels, but also half shekels. And a half shekel is important because the half shekel is what the Jews had to pay to the temple each year. And we know about this tax because it's a continuation of this census that is ordered in Exodus. So the census that happens is all Jews had to pay half a shekel, and this is all Jewish men starting at age 20 and older, and they would have to give this each year. Now, we know the temple tax was being collected each year under the Romans from a quote of Cicero and from numerous other bits of ancient evidence, partly from Jewish texts, but also some ostraca, some bits of pottery that were recording these records, and bits of papyri recording the temple tax from Egypt. So Cicero's a particularly helpful bit because of what he actually tells us about how the temple tax was collected. And he says, when, each year, gold, under the accounting heading of the Jews, was often carried from Italy and from all our provinces to Jerusalem. So he's talking about a large bit of money being carried for the sake of the Jews from all over the empire to Jerusalem each year. And this quotation only really makes sense as part of the temple tax and the way the Romans are facilitating its payment. So basically what Cicero is describing is a system where a whole bunch of gold is being shipped across the empire to Jerusalem in order to pay for this temple tax. But the temple tax also required that it be paid in silver, in pure silver. So the money, this gold, had to be exchanged by money changers at the temple from gold into silver. Or if someone was living in the area around Jerusalem, they could bring 256 pruta and exchange that for an entire shekel and give the entire shekel, or they could give 128 pruta and exchange that for the half shekel they need to pay for their temple tax. Of course, this also leads us into another reason they need the money changer. If they did not convert it all into gold, then they could just pay it in a shekel. Except that the Tyrian shekel only really circulated around the city of Tyre, where the shekels were produced, and the southern area of Syria, Phoenicia, and Jerusalem. And so they needed to use other coins to pay for this temple tax and convert them into the Tyrian shekel. So one of the best examples of this, that Roman denarius, the coin that was worth a quarter of the Tyrian shekel. The Roman denarius circulated in the western half of the Roman Empire, so in Italy, Sicily, Spain, Greece, and Gaul. Now, when the Romans would pay their temple tax, they would probably pay it, or the Jews would probably pay their temple tax in denarii and then have it converted to gold, send the gold to Jerusalem, and there it would again be converted back into shekels to pay for their census and temple tax in Jerusalem. Now, this also goes both ways because this is a religious tax for people of the Jewish faith to pay for their religious obligations. But there were also the civic taxes of the political authority of the Roman Empire, where people would take their pruta or their shekels and convert that into denarii to send that to Rome. And this would be true of people all over the empire, that they could just send denarii from the western provinces or other silver coins that could be converted to denarii to Rome, or they could convert it to gold and send that to Rome. And of course, this is a practice that is separate. It's a political tax instead of the religious tax of the Jews. And it's a practice that a little bit later on, when Jesus is preaching in the temple, the Pharisees are not happy about his preaching and his popularity, and so they plot against him. They challenge him. And they ask whether it's lawful for the Jews to pay taxes to Caesar, these political taxes. And Jesus, recognizing their malice, says that yes, it has a portrait and inscription of the emperor, of Caesar, on the coin. In this case, it's probably the Emperor Tiberius. And so he says, therefore, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render to God the things that are God's.